think if you're not spending so much time and money collecting the information of innocent Americans.
Nobody at the NSA is routinely listening into your telephone conversations.
Maybe we could have spent more time knowing that one of the Sonaref boys, one of the Boston bombers, had gone back to Chechnya.
The terrorists overseas are trying to recruit people in our country. We saw a great example of just what I'm talking about in the Boston.
The bulk collection of all of our phone records all of the time is illegal, so really it ought to stop.
Well, Rand Paul and I agree on most things. We don't agree on this.
Well, there you go, a bit of a back and forth between Senator Rand Paul and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. We're both from Kentucky, by the way, but they don't agree on this issue. We're talking about the NSA's illegal spying program as ruled on by a federal judge.
They're being
recently.
very respectful about it, but respectfully
agree
to disagree.
Are known to do in the U.S. Senate, especially when they're from the same party. But this is a great place to bring in our roundtable, and we welcome in today New York City criminal defense attorney Daniel Hochheiser, also a host of his own radio show, and also a radio show host, and the inventor of Clintonopolis. It's not a place, it's two people. Larry Elder, great to have you back with us, Larry. Larry is our resident libertarian, and I'm sure Daniel has some opinions about the Patriot Act in his role as a defense attorney. Dan, let's start with you. Rand Paul has threatened to filibuster the renewal of the Patriot Act, at least certain portions of it, this upcoming week. Are we going to see another 10-hour Rand Paul filibuster, and if so, is it a worthy cause?
I think Senator Paul thinks it is because he's going to shine a spotlight on this debate, which is this tension between allowing the government to have the tools they need to go after the terrorists by searching phone records and collecting phone data versus the libertarian side, which Larry can speak to well, I'm sure, which is that people in America want privacy and we don't want to live under a big brother government regime. So there's this tension here, and this is really about where the line should be and how we balance these two competing interests.
All right, Larry, we heard Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell both use the Boston Marathon bombing case to help support their stance. Who is right in this argument?
Well, that's the problem. We don't know who's right. The argument has always been, show us how the NSA program has in fact stopped terror plots, thwarted them, or helped you solve them. And we hear inconsistent things. So, and part of it is because they can't tell us certain kinds of things, so we really don't know how effective the program is. That's one of the debates.
All right, so
what is your libertarian stance? What is your stance?
Well, it's interesting. Dan said I could speak to this. Most libertarians are probably not happy with Larry Elder's position. I'm a 9/11 libertarian, as my libertarian friends call me, and not in a positive way. I believe that there are bad guys out there, and we need tools to fight the bad guys. Now, as to collecting everything the way the government has done illegally, and then storing it, and then allegedly going back and getting a warrant to get the material, that's very problematic. I have no idea whether that's effective. And it certainly is not legal. That is not the intention that Congress had on 215. If Congress had outlined that, if I had been in Congress, I would have supported it. But I don't like the idea that they did it in secret the way they did it.
All right, Larry, let's talk a bit about Clintonopolis, as you call it. Here is former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee in an interview with George Stephanopoulos.
Shirt you're selling right now, defeat the Clinton machine. What do you know about challenging the Clintons that others may not?
Well, first of all, as you well know from having worked for them, the Clintons know how to win, and they play to win. They play hard. They answer every attack immediately and vociferously.
Larry, your thoughts? Because we haven't really heard much from Hillary, have we?
No, we sure haven't. And back in 1996, when Mr. Stephanopoulos was hired by ABC, ABC assured people that he was not going to serve as a news guy. He was going to serve as an analyst or a commentator. Surprise, surprise, fast forward a few years, they named him chief correspondent of ABC News. It is an outrage. It's offensive. He's been sitting there all these years, a partisan, if there's ever been one. If you've seen the documentary, wonderful documentary called War Room, he and James Carville are out there plotting to get Bill Clinton elected because they believe in his message. Nothing wrong with that, but don't tell me he's a news guy. Why not give the job to Karl Rove or Dick Morris, for crying out loud? It's ridiculous.
Okay, there's been a lot of talk about this on media lately about what constitutes as a legitimate news anchor. But let's be honest now. Things have changed a lot. There are former congressmen and women that are now serving as anchors. Diane Sawyer worked for Nixon.
But George Stephanopoulos is
does
the
it
anchor
matter?
of their weekend
No,
public
but-
current affairs show. He's moderated presidential debates. He's also the lead anchor on Good Morning
But they
America,
weren't
the most
hiding,
valuable franchise
right?
at
They
ABC
weren't
News.
hiding his background, and he's not the first.
But they weren't exactly
person
transparent,
who-
Daniel, with his contributions
Right,
here.
they
What's
weren't.
your
He
take?
wasn't
We got
transparent.
about 30 seconds to go before we get into the break. Let's let Dan hop in here and get his take.
Well, I don't agree with Larry on this point because I think that we all knew who George Stephanopoulos was when he joined ABC. We knew he used to be the spokesman for the Clinton White House. We also know that he wrote this book, All Too Human, which was a very critical account of his disappointments with President Bill Clinton. So I don't think that this revelation about contributing money to the Clinton Foundation is really significant because we all knew Stephanopoulos was a Clinton guy, a Democrat, and frankly, I've seen his performance over the years, and I've always found him to be pretty
We gotta run.
centrist.
We'll be right back. We'll hear more from both of you coming up next.
All right, before we get to our next topic, we want to wrap
Yes.
off where we left off before the commercial break and bring back in our roundtable. Daniel Hochheiser, radio host and author, also another radio host. Larry Elder joining us again. Daniel, I want to give you a chance to wrap up what you were saying about George Stephanopoulos.
Well, I think the record shows that he's been a centrist as an anchor, and we all need to remember that Bill Clinton is not a liberal. He was never a liberal. He was a centrist in the White House. He was a moderate. He was basically, a Southern Democrat.
But Daniel, I don't think the concern
And,
so much is Bill Clinton, as much as it is you have Hillary Clinton running for the White House right now, and a man in a very prominent position who worked closely with that family in a unique
Doing
way.
stories on the Clinton Foundation, and by the way, he happened to donate $75,000 and didn't disclose it to the viewers or his boss.
I guess we'll wrap this
Right,
up by
and
saying
$75,000 to George Stephanopoulos, who has, a tremendous multi-million-dollar contract. I don't think is that significant.
Yeah.
And I'd find it hard to imagine that.
We
that
do
would
want to wrap
improve.
this up because we got other stuff to talk to.
Real quickly,
Sure,
John.
sure, Larry.
Here's the problem. I agree with everything Daniel just now said about not being surprised that Stephanopoulos has given money to the Clinton Foundation. I assume he's close to the Clintons. It doesn't surprise me that a former intern of Stephanopoulos is now the campaign manager of Hillary, and he didn't disclose that. He never should have been hired in the first place, any more than NBC would have hired Karl Rove or CBS would have hired Ari Fleischer, the former press secretary of George W. Bush. It is offensive to have this guy hired and then have him suddenly morph into a news guy. It's offensive.
Yeah, well, more offensive, I think, is the fact that Hillary Clinton doesn't feel the need to answer any questions. Actually, not that.
really bothers
that the American public doesn't seem to care that she's not doing this. If people aren't happy with the way this White House is dealing with the press, very top-down, and she wins, it's only going to get worse. But we want to move on. We want to talk about an Ohio teacher who has now been fired after scolding a student for bullying. Let's take a listen.
Last month, Nicole tells me one of her students was misbehaving. She says he blew his nose on other children. He pushed one young boy to the ground. The list goes on. So she stepped in with a question.
Do you realize what your actions and your words and how they're hurting other students and your friends?
She says that's it. But within days, she was placed on paid leave. She says she was told her comment constituted, quote, public humiliation.
All right, so there's a couple aspects of this. You got the
Right.
bullying issue, and teachers are struggling with this in their classrooms. It's affecting education. But also, another issue, Daniel, I think you have a school board telling a teacher how to do her job. What say you, sir?
Well, we're really in a much different time than when, we grew up. It used to be that parents could decide, if their kids were going to walk to the park, and now we see kids being rounded up by the police walking to the park, and the police are telling parents how to parent, and now we have a situation where we're telling a teacher how to scold and reprimand, and it's really out of control, and we need to give teachers and parents the power that they deserve to supervise these kids properly.
So, Larry, I want to get your thoughts. Was this teacher, this lesson in class bullying, did she go too far?
It doesn't strike me that she went too far. I also agree with Daniel that we do need to empower teachers and parents, and that leads us to something that I suppose Dan doesn't like, and that's vouchers. give parents the option to say, I don't want my kid going to this government school. There's lax enforcement, there's lack of security, there's too much gang violence or whatever, and I want my kid out of that. But the Democratic Party is beholden to the unions, and the unions are foursquare against vouchers.
Yeah, and I think today, and I might be...
We talk about this all the
Larry,
time.
the issue
Yes,
is
sir.
school choice.
Larry,
Go ahead, Dan.
I got 3 kids in private schools. Give me 3 vouchers, please.
Yeah, no, this is an issue. And I think today, guys, the NAACP came out against school choice. I do think that this issue, and this speaks to the problem here where you have school boards being overburdensome on teachers in the classroom, but school choice is an issue, I think, in 2016 that has enormous crossover appeal. And if the left does not hop on this opportunity, I think the right actually is. And Larry, correct me if I'm wrong here, but don't you think school choice maybe is the greatest opportunity for Republicans to make inroads in urban communities?
It absolutely is. And when you look at teachers, for example, that teach in Philadelphia, in Chicago, 39% of public school teachers have their own kids in private schools, as opposed to 12% of the general public. Now, they won't even eat their own cooking.
Right, I know. And I went to a public school in high school. I had a wonderful public school education,
so
but
did
I
I.
feel like a lot of those teachers that Larry just mentioned, you don't have the same type of education available for a lot of public schools in a lot of places around this country.
What teachers face now, it's nothing compared to when we were going to school.
Yeah.
We just aged ourselves right there, didn't we?
We'd love to have you both back for a conversation about school choice, and that is definitely a topic we'll broach here in the future. But Daniel Hochheiser, Larry Elder, great to have you both with us as always.
Thank you.
And Larry, we'll have you back. We need to play Real or Fake coming up here again soon.
Yeah, we do. I always love
You
doing
are the
that.
reigning champion.
All right, well, it was another rough winter for U.S. home builders and the real estate market, but does hope spring eternal for the U.S. housing sector?
And the president's plan to normalize relations with Cuba, not popular with everyone, especially in South Florida, but see why rum drinkers might be excited about a little new development we got working on.
All that and much more. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmax now.